What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back to Thrash Reviews, where yours truly, Thrash Maniac 99, continues to review upcoming hard rock and heavy metal albums in the calendar year of 2016, and I'm back at it again today with another review, and this is for one of the most highly anticipated albums of this year that came out Friday, and I actually talked about this band on Bands with the Most Anticipated Albums for 2016 video a long time ago. The newest album from Darkthrone, their album Arctic Thunder. Holy moly, and this is Darkthrone's 16th studio album. That's a lot of fucking albums, but in case you've been living under a rock, Darkthrone is a Norwegian metal band that formed back in 1986. So they've been going at it for 30 years strong. And they started off in their early years going into their debut album as more of a death metal band or technical death metal band. And that kind of combining death with Entombed to some extent on their first album, which is a phenomenal debut, Soulside Journey. But then after Fenriz and Nocturno Culto expressed a somewhat of a big distaste for the American death metal scene, they decided to move away from that and go into being one of the pioneering bands of the Norwegian black metal scene, with what people would call the unholy trio of black metal albums from Darkthrone. Blazing the Northern Sky, Under a Funeral Moon, and Transylvanian Hunger, with, in my opinion, Blazing the Northern Sky was the best out of those albums. And over the years, they continued to be a black metal band until about 2006 when they put out an album called The Cult Is Alive, where they went more kind of crust punk style. Crust punk, like hardcore mixed with extreme metal and anarcho stuff. And then after that album, they kind of were combining crust punk with old school traditional heavy metal from the 70s and 80s. And then their last album that came out 3 years ago, 2013's Underground Resistance, was a monumental album. It was incredible. It was just virtually an old school 80s, early 80s metal album of sounding like bands like Venom, Celtic Frost, Merciful Fate, Metallica, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, AC/DC, so on and so forth. It was a classic, modern classic. How did they follow up to that with Arctic Thunder? Well, let's talk about this. To start off, we're going to talk about the first track, TUNDRA LEECH, which was the first single for the album. And it was a pretty damn good opening track, and it sort of brought up people's thinking that, man, this sounds like they're going back to their black metal sound in a way. To be honest, like, the only particular things of their black metal sound that are here is that slow tempo that they were known for, as well as Nocturno Culto's raspy vocals. But also it combines some elements of Underground Resistance with that old school traditional metal philosophy. So in a way, this song, and hell, even this whole album, was sort of trying to combine their 90s black metal material with the 2010s traditional heavy metal type of sound. Then the next track I wanted to touch base on was Burial Bliss, which sort of keeps on that same idea as the song TUNDRA LEECH, but make it even more slower, kind of almost bringing in a doom metal variety to the album within this track. But also on other tracks on the album, like Throw Me Through the Marshes, that had a lot of a doom-laden vibe to it. But then we get to the closing track of the album, The Wyoming Distance. The shortest track of the album, at a little over 3 minutes, and it kind of combined that kind of faster speed metal variety with that doomy tempo, but keeping that core idea of combining their 90s black metal with the 2010s traditional metal sounds they were going for. So overall with this album, to me it felt somewhat inconsistent, and in a sense and I seen it in comments of people talking about this album, that they were kind of copying themselves. To some extent, that is true. Like on the song Deep Lake Trespass, there was a riff that sounded so much similar to TUNDRA LEECH, that it kind of sounded like that. So in a way, they were being too derivative within themselves on this album. Doesn't mean the songs on the album were terrible by any means of the imagination. They were actually alright tracks. It's just, after the awesomeness of the first two songs, the quality kind of stumbled a little bit until they got to the middle portion of the album with the title track, Arctic Thunder. They kind of picked it back up, but then it went down again, and then they did finish strong with Wyoming Distance. But to me, it just felt too inconsistent. A couple songs kind of sounded like they were just cut off to some extent, if you ask me. So that's just my opinion. If I were to rate this, I'd give this a 79 out of 100. This was a bit of a disappointment. Actually, it was a disappointment, but there's still enough on this album that can deliver. Particularly the first two tracks, the title track, and the closing track. Everything else was kind of So yeah, in comparison to Underground Resistance, this was a disappointment. But hopefully if they come back with another album, hopefully they can come back stronger. Maybe try to build off of this album, but try and not repeat themselves over and over again. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. Peace out, and have a good night. Or day, or whenever you watch.